Alright, so now we are going to work on uh, project controller. So in last video we saw how we can create services. We created services and service methods for mostly for the CRUD operations. Now in this video we'll create controller actually, since right now we cannot test this method until unless we write unit test cases, but we are not doing it right now. So let's do it via controller. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write one controller file. So let's say project controller dot ts, and I'll create a class project export class project controller, and I will write one constructor here. Okay, and I will inject private read only my service project service. This will be project service. I'll have to import, since this is a controller, I will have to annotate it with the controller as well. Now we also need to register it with the module, not here, just below this. Alright, so okay, so now we can start writing the endpoints, and this project controller will be a private. So what we are going to do, let's keep it open as of now. Once we finish testing, we'll start adding authorization here. So the first thing is like we want to create one get controller, get endpoint. So overall base path will be projects, and then we can add we can follow the patterns as we are doing in other controller, like get users, get user, update users. Same way we can do it here as well. So async get projects, and generally this will just call project service dot get projects. Alright, I'm just going to return this from here. That's all. We only need to add get annotation here. Okay. Alright. Let's create second one, async get project, and here, since we are trying to get a single project, we'll have to pass one project ID as well. Then this will act like project slash project ID, and we'll have to extract it from parameter, request parameter, and I can name it as project ID. Okay, since this is a project ID in URL, so we'll have to write it project ID here, and we can write variable name as project ID, and this will be a number. Ideally this will be a string, since we are passing it from URL. So what we can do, we can use our pipe, valid pipe. This will transform it to number, and then we can call our service method for getting user, get project by ID, and this time we can pass project ID. That's all. Next, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write a method for create. So let's write a create endpoint, create project, and here since this is a create, So we will be using post request, post method, and the endpoint will be same. I mean the path will be same as the base path. Here we can pass create project DTO. This will be of type create project DTO, but we are going to take it from body, so we are going to write body annotation, just body, like this. Then what we can do, we can just return our response from create project method. We can pass here create project DTO. That's all. Next, what we can do, we can write update project method. Here, since this is an update request, I would like to use patch, and in patch we'll also need project ID, so which project we are trying to update. So for that we need a project ID. So let's use first parameter as project ID, and this will be number, and the second parameter as update. And we are going to take this from parameter. So we'll take this from param, and we'll have to get it from body. All right. Okay, why I'm getting this error? I haven't added a method bracket. Now one thing I'd like to do, I'd like to add my pipe here, valid ID pipe. So what it will do, it will just transform string to integer. If it is not able to do that, then it will throw some error. Okay, so since we have a project ID and update project DTO, so next we can do is we can just call our service and call our method project ID and update project DTO. That's all. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create one method for remove project, and for remove project I will need one project ID, so I'll take it from, no, this would be a project ID, so I'll take it from param. Okay, in param I can use this as a method, so I will annotate it with remove delete request, and here I'm going to pass project ID. Alright, I'll also have to import this. Okay, then I'll add valid pipe here, valid ID pipe. Then I need to map it with some variable, so let's name it project ID, and this will be a number. And now we can call our service method remove project, and we can pass project ID. That's all. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next, I'm going to run this application and see if this is working, and if some error comes up, then we'll be resolving it. Okay, so right now Okay, let me just turn off my other application since this port is occupied. Let me rerun this application and we'll see if again after this if this is working. I don't see any error as of now, so I'm gonna pull Postman in the screen and then I'll show you if our requests are working. So first what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go in database SQLite. I'm going to refresh. So now we have this projects table. We have ID, created, updated, and name, description, status, progress, updated, and updated by and created by. So this is foreign key. Also, we have one more table for the relations. So let's test it now. I'm gonna close all the tabs here. Close all the tabs. Now let me just create one more folder here, and this will be projects or just project. And in project, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add one request. Uh, Create project. I'd like to copy paste URL from some other endpoint. So I'm just gonna put it here. I will make it post, and then this I'll remove this auth and replace it with projects that we have defined here, right? In projects controller we define projects. That's why I'm just writing projects here, and this profile will not be needed. Alright, and in body I will have to pass a JSON object. So if I go back in DTO, so we need to pass name, description, status, progress. Alright, so how we can pass it? So let's try to pass mandated thing first. I mean this name and description, and then we'll see how these things are working, or we can do it inverse. Let's pass all the properties and then we will handle this optional one. Let's say admin tool for install plan, and we can this in description we can write a tool to manage install plan. Okay, and then what else? Status will be not started, and progress will be 0. Okay, let's try to make a request and see if this is working. So it is saying project created successfully. The first thing I would like to do is I would like to see in the database whether it is created or not. So we can see the database entry, and we don't have created at and updated at. To set the user in created by and updated by, we'll have to set the user while creating project. So in that case, first we need to get the user here. So I'm going to use request. This will come from NestJS common, and I'm naming it request of type any, and here I will be passing a second parameter request.user.id. And if I go in create project, here I can mention one more parameter, and this will be uh, active user ID or maybe current user ID. That will look good, and this will be a number. Now before saving this in database, we need to fetch the user of this ID, and then we can set this user in project to create, and then we can save it. But there are two ways to do that. Either we can inject user service here, or we can inject user repository here, or we can create a separate service, since this get user by ID is very common. So in that way, like it will be at one common place. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one separate service. So for that, I'm going to create a folder in common, that is service, and here I'm going to write shared user service.ts, and let's say export class shared user service, and this I'm going to make it injectable, and then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just add a constructor quickly. Alright, and now I'm going to add inject repository annotation. Alright, and then what we can do, we can pass user entity here from user, and we can create one variable private read only, and then this would be a user repository. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to define its type repository, and this would be a type of user. Okay, done. I've created this shared user service as provider, so I'll have to register it here in the module as well. And this module is actually global, but I will be using this in other modules, so I will have to export this from here. We'll also get one more error, and the reason why I'm getting this is it's saying like Nest cannot resolve dependency in shared user service. So in shared user service right now we have this dependency, so this we'll have to resolve it. So how we can resolve it? Once we define here that we are going to use user as a entity in this module for repository, so to do that we'll have to import type one module for feature, and here we are going to do user. All right, now this should go away, and okay, now this should work. All right, okay. So what I'm gonna do next here is I'm going to write get async get user by ID, and what I can do here is can pass user ID, and this would be a number. You might be thinking why I'm defining this shared user service. So initially you might have noticed in auth we injected user service here, right? So in when you feel like you are injecting one service in more than two or three places, then you should create a separate service in common place. So instead of adding modules, and that I mean hierarchy will be a complex structure, and it will be a complex structure. So you are importing user here, and you are importing auth in user, or so yeah. So instead of creating this mess, it's better to have a shared service file, a common file, and that you can import in every module. Even if that is a global module, then probably will not have to import the module. You can directly inject the service. So let's do this way. Now what I'm going to do next is return this dot user repository dot uh, okay, so one or find one or fill. Here what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass, or we can just use find one by or fill. We can use user ID. How this works? Okay, we need to pass where clause. That's fine. So we can do this way. ID is equal to user ID, or we can just name it ID and remove this one. Fine. Now what I'm gonna do next, since if I go back in common module, you will notice this module is global. So in project service, we don't need to import it in project module since that is global. That service will be available in global dependency container. The instance of that service. So we can access the instance here. So what I'm gonna do next, I'm gonna write a private read only and shared user service, and then, or we can say user repository. Here we can say uh, or instead of user repository we can say user service, and then what I'm gonna do right here is shared user service. After this line, what I can do, I can try to find user. So get user by ID, and we can pass user ID, current user ID, and now const, we'll have to await it as well, and this is a promise, right? This is a promise, so we'll have to await it, and user equal to this thing, and what I'm gonna do is if there's an user, so I'm going to assign this user property on the object project to create, and this will go in shine uh, created by user. It is just created by, I guess. Okay, let me check it quickly. This is created by. At the time of create, we will not be setting updated by, so we are just keeping it created by, and we can set it user. If you notice, uh, this is not an array. Created by will always be a one user. That's why I'm setting a single user here. Instead of keeping its name as user, you can also name it created by user or something like that. Okay. Now, one more thing. When you, as a project manager or project team lead, if you are creating this project, so by default, you are part of this project. So what I want is I want to add myself, the one who is creating this user, by default, automatically in the assigned users. So let's do this. So we already have this user, and at the time of creating the project, we can just add ourselves, but we'll not be adding any more user at the time of create. And explicitly later on, we can add any more users from any, I mean, we'll create a separate endpoint for assigning users, and that we can use to add any more users. So by default, for the first time when you create this project, you will actually get added by yourself without doing anything. So what I can do, I can add one more property assigned users, and here what I'm gonna write user this way. Let's try to test this now and see if this is working or not. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna write one more thing like admin tool UI for install plan, something like that. I don't know. Okay, so if I go back and refresh, this time I'm expecting that I will have a created user. This is fine. And if I go back in project users, I also have this entry. So this is working, right? In next video, we'll see how we can verify, update, and delete and other endpoints.